I wanted to attract attention of members of the Council that despite the fact that we checked all the services in this room before ARIA has started, now all services are off except the translation. We do not have the webcast, and we don't have any translation provided by the UN. But we made a decision to proceed despite this unfortunate development that I'm very short of calling a sabotage against, again, the truth related to use of Russian language and the crimes committed in Ukraine. So we decided to proceed with our Arria-formula as it is, and we then later on circulate the information and the documents after it. And we decided to proceed, not to be silenced. And thank you all again for coming and listening to what we have to say. I will now give the floor to Aleksandr Semchenko, a member of a political council of the party, Derzhava, political party that was banned by Kiev by fabricating a politically motivated criminal case against him. Alexander, please be aware that we do have an interpretation and it's simultaneous. Please, speak in the common pace. You will get translated. Please, you have the floor. Please unmute yourself. Вас не слышно. Включите микрофон, пожалуйста.
Здравствуйте.
Good afternoon. I was told that I only have 15 minutes, so I'll be very brief and just cover the main points. Now, why am I speaking to you against the background of a white wall? This is to make sure that the killers from Zelensky, whom he sends, cannot identify my location. And the murder of political opponents have become a routine practice even before 2022. And currently, it is the main instrument that's being used by the fascist regime, which has taken power over my motherland, Ukraine. Unfortunately, not all of my peers have been able to avoid meeting hired killers. A member of the political council of our party, Kirill Stremtsov, perished. Our friend Aleksandr died. He is a person of disability. He left he lost his legs and arms when he was a child. The Zelensky regime did not spare him and sent a missile against him. I am currently under sanctions by the Bandera regime. Zelensky introduced them illegally against me using his decree. Under Ukrainian law, you cannot introduce sanctions against a Ukrainian national unless there is a court decision to do it. But Zelensky did do this without a court decision. The Zelensky regime is accusing me of attempting to undermine the constitutional order. But Zelensky himself was the one who trampled the constitution underfoot, and this was done even before 2022, when he attacked human rights and usurped the authorities of other bodies of power. In particular, he destroyed the body of constitutional oversight, the Constitutional Court of Ukraine. But I'm not here to talk about myself. Ukraine is being used so as to conquer Russia. That is exactly what I mean, and the technology here is well known. In North America, the Europeans consistently pitted tribes against each other. And this is exactly what's being now. The Russian people are being pitted against each other, and we're forced to fight each other. Unfortunately, I do not have time to have a long historic background. All those who are interested, I recommend that you read my book called The Fourth Reich, in which I describe in detail how for decades Ukraine is being created into an instrument to use against Russia. Conducting wars using somebody else is something that the West knows how to do very well. I hope that no one at the UN did not forget the GA resolution number 260 of 9th December 1948. This is a resolution on genocide. One of the indicators of genocide is also a ban on the use of one mother tongue, the systematic destruction of books in the mother tongue, destroying the historic and cultural heritage. The Bandera regime, headed by Poroshenko and Zelensky, destroyed tens of thousands of monuments. And this something that took place prior to February 2022. My grandfather fought Hitler Germany for 4 years. He participated in storming Berlin, and in 2015 in Ukraine a law was passed which introduced criminal responsibility for using the very symbols under which my grandfather fought, by deprivation of liberty. And fighting historic memory is genocide. This is what the UN resolution states.
Лишением свободы до 10.
So up to 10 years is something that you can receive for having historic memory. 10 years is something you receive if you say, "Long live Ukraine, beautiful and strong." And these are the first lines of the Soviet anthem of Ukraine. And this is because this runs counter to the fascist regime headed by Zelensky,
Спрашивать в своем гимне.
who constantly is asking in his anthem. Alexandra, let me interrupt you for just a second, says the president. Could you please read your text without the pauses, because we have simultaneous interpretation here. Because this goes against the fascist leanings of the Zelensky regime, continues Mr. Semchenko, which constantly is asking with his anthem, has Ukraine is not dead yet? The state institutions are promoting insults and discrimination. In 2014, already in extrajudicial process, I was deprived of the right to participate in government activities. Thus, my civil rights were limited. Let me just recall here that this is the right I have under Article 21 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UN Declaration. And according to that declaration, it cannot be restricted. So the principle here is to divide and conquer. Everyone in this room here is stating that they are acting in the interest of the Ukrainians. But has anyone asked the people of Ukraine what it is that they want? The only subject of international law which asks the Ukrainians is Russia. Russia helped us conduct the referendum, which many of you call illegitimate. But the Zelensky regime didn't even hold elections. And that is truly an act of obvious lawlessness. And there is a very clear clarification that was handed out by the Constitutional Court of Ukraine about this. It's dated 15th of May 2014. Who of those who called Zelensky President of Ukraine have read this clarification from the Constitutional Court? Well, you should by now understand, on the other hand, why Zelensky destroyed the Constitutional Court of Ukraine. The Ukrainians chose Russia knowingly. And this was not just at the various referenda. 10 million Ukrainian citizens voted for Russia. They fled Zelensky regime to the territory of the Russian Federation. This is at the time when Russia, unlike Europe and America, did not try to lure the Ukrainians into it by issuing very generous social packages. Now, why Russia specifically? Well, because about 80% of people who live in Ukraine are Russian speakers. This is shown in many sociological surveys of public opinion. Unfortunately, I don't have enough time to dwell on those in detail. But the protection of the Russian language is stated directly in the Constitution of Ukraine. It's in paragraph 3 of Article 10. But on the 22nd of February 2014, a coup d'etat happened in Ukraine. And on the 23rd of February, the new government cancelled the law on languages and started exerting direct pressure on the Russian language. Russian language was being actively removed from mass media, from the film industry and publishing. And discriminatory quotas were introduced at the level of a law in 2016. According to the law on education of 2017, more than 4,000 schools changed from Russian to Ukrainian. In 2019, a few days before stepping down, Poroshenko signed his own version of the law on languages. And the new President Zelensky supported this law, despite the fact that its provisions ran counter to the campaign promises by Zelensky himself. This law essentially bans Russian in educational institutions such as kindergarten schools and higher learning institutions. A position of a special ombudsman on languages was introduced. In Ukraine, this office is called Sprachenführer. And the function of that Führer is fining for the use of the Russian language in a public space. And you are being fined if you use the Russian language in everyday activities, in shops, in restaurants, in hairdresser salons. And even at the parliamentary level, there was real pressure. The Supreme Rada turns off the microphones when the members of the Rada address their people in their own language, in Russian. The goal of this policy was formulated by the Secretary of the National Security Council of the Zelensky regime. His name is Alexei Danilov, and he stated that the Russian language in Ukraine has to disappear. The Zelensky regime, which usurped authorities in Ukraine, organized a terror system which punishes dissent. My own criminal case under Article 436(1), I can run into 10 years jail with my property being confiscated. The publication in 2018 of a chart in a Facebook which show the demographic trends before and after independence. Before independence, the number of people would grow by, on average, 500,000 people per year. After independence, it went down. For example, in 2021, before the large-scale war, the population of Ukraine diminished by 1.2 million people. And I placed those charts against the blue and yellow flag of Ukraine and the red and blue flag of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, just to make it clearer. And this is a publication that can now, as a result of which I can be jailed for up to 10 years. The criminal code was also added to with articles which provide for punishment for criticism of Zelensky and his accomplices. Article 46.2, for example. According to this article, the criticism of crimes of corruption, the criticism of human rights violations, all of this is being considered as justifying the Russian aggression. Let me just give you some examples as an illustration. Someone in Dnipropetrovsk Oblast was jailed because he criticized Zelensky for his Bandera propaganda. Let me recall here that in 1935, Poland sentenced Bandera to life imprisonment for terrorism. He is currently the official hero in Zelensky's Ukraine. Someone in Vinnytska Oblast was sentenced for likes.
И таких дел.
And there are tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of such cases. I am convinced that this statement of mine I'm making now will also be used as proof of my guilt in the criminal proceedings against me, of my guilt which was politically motivated, that was started against me by the Zelensky regime. This is true fascism. This is open terror. Do you understand this, I wonder, when you support Zelensky? When you give him and his representatives a platform to speak? Well, the West talks about their values, but how do you convey them? A famous Russian scientist, the founder of the civilization approach, Nikolai Danilevsky, in 1969 has stated, or in 1869 stated already, that the West is moving its civilization forward by colonizing and depriving of the conquered people of their individuality. In practice, this leads to total destruction of some peoples by others. For example, this was done by the English colonizers in North America, where headhunters teams were organized. The colonial administration paid them per scalp of a killed Indian, and the price was 6 shillings. Entire tribes were exterminated down to the last person. Similarly, Western civilizing people were acting on other continents as well. I think the representative of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, who became a victim of the Belgian monarchy, understands very well what I am referring to. Let me recall here that in the spring of 2014, the representatives of the regime which took over the power bodies in Ukraine as a result of a coup d'etat also similarly announced a reward for killing the Russian-speaking people in the southeast of the country. They weren't even considered to be human. Insulting epithets were used against them, for example, the Colorados. Bringing people to the level of a pest, the Colorado beetle. And squashing a Colorado beetle is always a useful and good thing to do. And Russia became the protector of these people, despite the fact that Germany, Poland, and France should have stood up to protect them. Those countries who in February 2014 guaranteed abiding by the agreements between the legal president of Ukraine and the participants in the Maidan coup. I'd like to use this opportunity and ask the representative of France whether or not they feel any guilt. Your state, who had the duty to interfere, you had undertaken this obligation upon yourself. But you allowed the coup d'etat to take place. And I wonder whether you feel guilty because in the fall of 2022, 12 people were killed in Donetsk at a public transport stop using your means. Russia was the only one that stood in the path of genocide, trying to prevent it. And as a Ukrainian, I thank Russia for the protection and thanks to that protection for the freedom and life that was preserved because of that. The last sentence that I would like to say, and I'd like to say Ukrainian.
За захист, за збереження своєї свободи та життя, який я зберіг завдяки цьому захисту. Дякую за увагу. Спасибо за внимание.
Thank you for your attention.